All right, and we're live. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Notable Quotables, your new favorite podcast, where we will discuss, break down quotes, hopefully, that will inspire you, be thought provoking, and help change your life, maybe give you words to live by. I am your host, Octavius William Lundy. You may also call me Avi. Joined by my wonderful roommate today, Frankie Ramirez. Hello, Frankie.
Hello, guys.
Hi. You want to give us a little background on yourself, Frankie?
Well, I am just a roommate. I was born in this room, and I have lived here all of my 22 years.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were 24.
I am. I was so focused on the joke, though, that my age escapes me.
That's us. Yeah, I feel you.
No, I'm originally from Miami.
Mm.
Grew up in Miami. I grew up with Cuban parents.
Right.
I always grew up in a very multicultural setting. I think that really set me off on the right foot for having a balanced perspective on life.
Yeah.
When you grow up with two challenging lifestyles.
How do you feel that gave you a balanced perspective? What do you mean by that?
It was always, I think in my life, there's always been a duality.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, a lot of the Cuban ideology is a little bit more conservative, whereas the American ideology is a little bit more liberal.
Right.
And so I was always straddling those two and trying to see which one I agreed with. And so having been challenged from an early age as to how different peoples can live, then it brought me to a conclusion that different people do live by different ideologies.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's very good to get at a young age. You know, really. Do you feel like it's helped you have an open mind as an individual?
Not initially, but I think that the more I appreciate it, the more I do get to, I get to a place of an open mind.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
What about you?
Yeah. So I'm from Ithaca, New York, upstate New York. I don't know if it's really upstate. Like, I grew up my whole life, people being like, "Oh, so it's upstate New York." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, okay." But then I met other people who are like, "It's not really upstate New York, because like there's more upstate New York." But like, anyway, it's the hometown of Cornell University, so it's kind of cool. It's a small town, very beautiful.
Does upstate mean like in geographical location? It's just further north?
Yeah,
or
geographical
is it like a
location.
cultural term that people use?
Geographical, because like people, like if you say you're from New York, people immediately assume and or ask you mean New York City, and I'm always just like, no, I'm not. I'm not from New York City. Not even a huge fan of the city, really. Like it's cool, it's big and everything, but like it's not my vibe.
Okay.
But yeah, like you have to specify, otherwise they think you're like from the Bronx or something.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just they share the name.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm from there. It's a small town. It's kind of how I grew up, more like a tight knit like community type thing. I don't know. Yeah, and like I don't know. I got really into. I've always been into psychology, like how people think, how the body works, things like that. But I got into philosophy and stuff like that. Let's say a few years after I graduated high school, just started asking those questions to myself, like, what do I want to do? What's interesting to me? Like, what is life about? What is my life about? And then that kind of helped spark why I wanted to do this podcast, things like that. Because like I started getting into philosophy, and it's like there's so many great ideas and quotes and texts that you can take from people who lived hundreds of years before us that are super relevant to what's going on in life right now. Like in terms of globally, but also just like for me as an individual. So I want to like break down these things and take in more knowledge, but also share the knowledge I have with others.
How amazing is that, though? Because we've developed a writing system, and we have access to the internet, and we have access to all this information. We could find, I guess, a middle ground with people who we wouldn't think to have any middle ground with.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Like the fact that like even just us meeting, like because I found this room on Facebook. If Facebook didn't exist, I would never be here. One person had the idea or whatever controversially, but then obviously other people helped create the company. But just like that one platform that's made possible is the main reason we're here right now. Like we wouldn't be here right now without that platform to help start us off with that.
Imagine if we had to like do telegrams.
Oh my God, no, I couldn't do that. Oh my God. I mean, it'd be interesting though. I have often thought about that, like the idea of being like pen pals with somebody. That would be super interesting. Like I kind of like having phone calls with somebody once in a while as opposed to like texting like fairly often.
True.
Because then it's like you get to like totally like check in and talk for hours about like a whole update on their life and their weeks and stuff, as opposed to like getting minute by minute notifications. You know.
I think it requires a certain type of dynamic for people who are constantly in contact.
Yes.
And I think you run the risk of running the relationship dry too early if you don't give each other time to miss each other.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah, time to miss each other. Yeah, I've always felt like I'm a person who misses somebody once I see them again. Does that make sense? Like because like when I'm off doing my own thing, I'm very focused on whatever it is I'm doing. So it's like right now I'm away from my family that's in New York, but like once I go back to New York, I'll realize how much I missed being around them. But right now, like I'm good because I'm doing my own thing. Does that make sense? Do you kind of relate?
I think it's also because you get to like see more of a development, right? Because you don't see the little changes that take time in the day-to-day living. And so when you miss that part, you actually see the change and you're like, wow, right, things have changed. And then you can put yourself in perspective with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so that's a little background on us. All right, let's get into the quotes. I had a few I wanted to go off of for the start of it.
Are they notable though?
They are notable. They are definitely notable. I kind of debated what I wanted to start with, but I think I want to start with one that is from, I feel like personal hero is kind of strong, but just someone who I did admire when I was younger, and still do to this day, which is Muhammad Ali. And it's kind of a 2-for-1. It's a quote by him, but also my own kind of take and perspective on it into my own quote. It's kind of revamped. So I do have like a little excerpt I already prepared, like written for it. So Muhammad Ali said, any man who sees the world the same at 50 as he did when he was 20 has wasted 30 years of his life. And I take that a step farther. Or is it further? I wrote further, but I said farther.
I think further is for abstract ideas and farther is for concrete ideas.
So like I throw a ball farther, but I furthered my education?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I was right with further, even though I said farther. So, okay, I take that a step further. There's 24 hours in a day, and that's a lot of time. If I view the world the same way I did yesterday as I do today, then I've wasted 24 hours of my life. Octavius Lundy and Muhammad Ali. So I said that to a friend of mine, I think like a month or two ago, and we were talking about how like my views, my beliefs, my way of life can change very rapidly. And that's because every single day, like I set aside time for thinking, for reflection, meditation, things like that. And it doesn't mean every single day my core values and beliefs are changing, but perhaps how I might go about expressing them or things that I include in them might change, because there's just, especially today, there's so much information. We get information overload sometimes. But there's so much information from all different kinds of sources and subjects that we can get. So I feel like if you view the world the same way you did yesterday, you haven't done yourself the duty of learning and growing and evolving in the minuscule amount you can in that 24 hours.
I think I'd like to start off with
the original
Muhammad
quote?
Ali's original quote.
Yeah.
And I do think that what he says is very true. And I think you find a lot of people who've reached middle age and they still can't figure out how they want to live their lives, or they still have these beliefs.
Yes.
Or they're kind of very repressedly holding on to their fleeting youth. And I think one of the beautiful things about life is that we get older.
Yeah.
I think that people in today's world, youth is such a sexy, sold thing that we really don't see the value anymore in a gray hair, in wrinkles, in being old, in being this sage person who's lived through all this, and you have so much to say.
Right.
And I think that because society doesn't appreciate that as a whole, you get old people who who are quite bitter about the circumstance
Oh
because
yeah.
they're not appreciated the same way, and are quite bitter towards young people because they know that young
Right.
people get it all without even trying.
Right.
So on the list of white privilege and street privilege and all the privileges that we want to add in the
Yes,
modern world,
young
we should
privilege.
also add young privilege.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same thing being a 20-year-old guy as it is being a 30-year-old man.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I think once you're a 30-year-old man, you're people are less impressed by
Yes.
what you do and what you say.
There's a whole different level of standards. Yeah, and I like it's. I mean, age is something I have not embraced. Excuse me. In terms of like, oh, you're so young, you'll figure it out. Just because I don't know. I'm like, to me that feels like a disclaimer almost. Like I've learned to kind of take it in stride and, in a sense, use it to my advantage. Like, oh, I don't have everything figured out. Cool. I'm not supposed to because I'm so young.
Okay.
But it feels almost like condescending in a way when I hear it. But I've learned that's just a part of my ego and how I take it in, of course. But I feel like, I've learned to use that as an advantage in terms of like, yes, being so young means, okay, people are giving me this free range in terms of like, oh, you're going to make mistakes and, you're still figuring things out. Like, all right, cool. That helps me be able to like take risks and make mistakes and figure out what I want to do with my life without people being like, man, you need to get your shit together. You're X amount of years old. Like we don't have that on our shoulders yet. Like, yeah, I feel like once you reach like 30 or something, people are looking at you like, okay, what do you have to show for your time here? Like, what are you doing with your life? But when you're in that like 20 to 30 range, it's like, oh, you still don't know what life is about, shit like that. So you get that free range to kind of figure it out, which I think is good. And I don't think we should adhere to society's expectations or pressures, but I think we should be aware of them to some degree because they have some level of validity. Like, you don't need to live the life society tells you need to live, but I do think you need to reach a point where it's like, what am I contributing to society? What am I doing of value to help the world as a whole? And am I truly living the life that I know I can?
I think that's true. I think when we go to Muhammad Ali's quote, and he says, you view the world the same way you did when you were 20 as you do when you were 50, as you do when you're 50.
Yeah.
It's a disservice mostly because you then took your years, but you didn't learn anything from them.
Yeah, 30 years in his example.
And in his example, exactly 30.
Yeah.
So while we do have this like 20-something privilege of being able to make mistakes and kind of like straddling through life, and we can become functioning alcoholics for college, and we can just try all the drugs we want, and we can have all the sex we want, and repercussions and consequences are a thing that don't really exist in our dynamic of youth. I do think that there is a certain sense of responsibility that we carry with us once we get past that hill. Like
yes.
That we then have to like sit down and ponder with ourselves. Okay, I've taken my youth exactly as it was. I've used it up exactly as everyone has. But now what? Now where do we go? And I don't know if many people get to that stage, or if they just elongate those youthful years into their 30s and 40s and 50s.
Wow.
And so they just become 50-year-old 20-somethings.
Yes, that's very true. I was talking about this with the massage therapist I was with earlier today. Shout out the Recovery Spa here in Orlando. Great. But we were talking
If you'd
about,
like to sponsor us.
yeah, if you'd like to sponsor us with your small business, give me 8% of every massage that you get, all the profit.
And we will create
we
will create a vibe for you.
Yeah, we'll create revenue, absolutely. But we were talking about I lost track. What did you just say? Over here trying to make money.
Okay, and no more of this. That a lot of people reach their 50s as if they were still 20 because they never got to that point where they self-reflected and
Yes. A lot of people stay in like high school mindset. They never actually leave high school. And it doesn't even and even successful people too. People who are super ultra successful, they still don't necessarily mentally, emotionally, spiritually leave the high school dynamic. especially like imagine like a pro athlete. Like a lot of them, surprisingly to a lot of people, are very deep, existential, educated individuals. Is that the majority of them? Factually, no. It's just not. Why? I would say partially because of the personality type that goes into that sort of thing, but also especially when you live in a society where it's like you can be a 19, 20, 21-year-old making millions of dollars for putting a ball through a hoop or into a net or throwing it across a field. There's not really any motivation to expand your mindset, you know? You don't need to. If you do, that's awesome, but generally, if you're making that kind of money, have that kind of lifestyle, you just have to be that kind of person to want to do it if you already have that. But, so a lot of them will stay in that mindset regardless of their tax bracket or whatever. And I think that's a lot of what hinders growth in terms of like a nation, but especially as an individual, because it's just very easy to stay there in terms of the way that you see life and the way you interact with other individuals. And I think that, I know personally for me, it has been somewhat of a struggle because going into the working world, I didn't initially recognize that, how a lot of people are still in that mindset. And I did carry it with me because it's essentially all I've known. But then you get to a point and it's just like, what the fuck am I doing? What is everyone else doing? We're doing the same shit we were doing. And then it's like, okay, where do I go from here since I can't? There's this book I read, and it was about how to think like Leonardo da Vinci. And I kind of skimmed through it. One of the great things I took from it, though, was one of the great things about being an adult is you get to decide who you're influenced by. You get to decide who you imitate. As a kid, you're just like, oh, I act like mommy and daddy or whatever on the TV. As an adult, you get to be like, oh, I'm a conscious being. I get to decide to act like him or her or they or them. And that's how you get to go about your life. So I think that once you reach a point where it's like, I don't want to be like just whatever happens to be around me, you have to look somewhere else. I think that's kind of what brought me to philosophy, if that makes sense.
To start off with the comment on the sports things, I think that the way we treat athletes is overindulged. I don't think we do athletes many favors. And especially that we, as a nation, we prey on black communities for our athletes to make us money. So a lot of UCF, the football team is mostly African Americans and blacks who are taking that, and they don't invest in their educational careers because they're making so much money playing the sport that they don't even see the value in getting an education. And it's not to say that athletes are less prepared than other people, or rather it's a type of intelligence, a type of, bodily intelligence. It is a type of skill that they have.
Kinesthetic intelligence,
It's a skill that they have, and it's a skill that they hone, and it's a skill that they market on. Completely fine. But it's also, what is the incentive in it that we're creating for these men in these athletic positions, and how are we doing them a disservice by making the golden goose lay more golden eggs?
Right.
I also think that men who are athletes in high school or college and may find themselves that they've peaked in that stage, I think it also has to do with what we were talking earlier about identity and how people identify with certain parts of their life. If you identify too strongly as a football player, that will end because the body ages and the body will not be able to continue doing what it was doing at a young age. And so once men reach that age where they're like, oh, I can no longer do this. I'm no longer a football player. I'm no longer a soccer player. I'm no longer a soccer I already said that. I'm no longer, I'm no longer an athlete.
Yeah, an athlete.
Then who am I as a person?
Right.
And then you have these men who have like existential crises at 50. Yeah. And they buy these cars and they hang out with these young women.
It's very common.
And so it's like, what have you learned in the last 30 years? You focused all of your attention onto one aspect of your life, but you didn't bother exploring the other aspects of your life because you weren't given the chance, because you were being overindulged like a child, always getting candy. You never had to work for anything.
Yes.
You played the sport, you did the thing, you trained, you worked your heart, you worked your body to the core. But that's all you did.
Exactly. It left you, for a lot of them, while they may be exceptional, hard workers, devoted, determined, it may leave them one-dimensional in that matter. Like, yes, you can go and work out and exercise and put a ball into a net or through a hoop or run down a field better than 98% of the entire population. That is exceptional. No one can take that away from you. But if you can't do that, who are you? Not even like how do you provide income for yourself and your family? Just like, yeah, literally, who are you outside of that for your own personal well-being? I don't remember who it was. I heard this story like a few years ago about this I think this was a woman who her whole dream was to be on Broadway and do shows and stuff, and then she achieved it when she was really young, like I think a little bit younger than us. And then after she did it, she just like had no zest for life, and I believe she ended up ending her life. And it's insane to me. Like I get it, but I don't. Obviously, I have no idea what her actual mindset was. But like that was her dream, that was her goal, that was her drive, and she achieved it. And apparently, it seems like she felt like, okay, well, where do I go from here? And I guess she never had the support around her or took the time to actually explore, where do I go from here now that I've achieved X dream? And I think that it proposes an existential question, but also a practical question. Like, a lot of people get that, like, even if it's just like something simple, like, okay, this is my day job, this is what I do. Not necessarily a passion, but it's what I do. Like, okay, I'm a mailman. Okay, if you're laid off as a mailman, you've been doing it for 10, 20 years, like who are you? You were the guy who woke up at X amount of time, delivered the mail, came home, did this, and that, and now you don't anymore. Even if it wasn't directly passionate and enticing to your soul, it gave you a basis and a foundation for your life. So now, when that's taken away, you have to decide and discover who you are outside of that. I think we get very easily attached to these external things, which kind of plays into like what we were talking about earlier, the debate of like, is who you are in here, in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, versus your actions. And it's like, I do believe that it is your actions, but if you take away like your ability to perform certain actions, I think now you have to reinvent yourself.
I think that concerning the woman that ended her life because of her career, I think that that's just an identity issue. I think that the drive to reach that dream was the most exciting part of her life. Yeah. And it's sort of like how women, certain women suffer from postpartum depression. It's like having the baby and the pregnancy is like such an excitement that once you have it, it's like, oh, then what am I? Like, that's it. And it's not to say that that's the only sole reason. Of course, women go through a lot of hormonal changes during pregnancy and during childbirth. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of, the chaos of that is that once those hormones are released, and there's a big crash afterwards as well. Oh, yeah. So there's a biological aspect to it as well, but I also think that it's just an identity thing too for women and motherhood and that woman and getting to her career. Yeah. But concerning identity, I think that there's a quote by C.S. Lewis that I think can better encapsulate my views on it. And C.S. Lewis says, we don't have a soul. We are a soul. We have a body. And so, to me, that says our identity is somewhere inside us, but it doesn't, our identity is not our intelligence. No. It's not our kindness. It's not our meanness. It's not our vanity. It's not our greed. It's not all these things these feelings and these personality traits that we attribute to people, but rather the essence that resides inside our corporal self. Right. And so for me, what that means is that our identity is our essence. Yeah. Is the essence of who we are. Right. And then symptomatically that can appear with actions. So I think people who have a very good sense of identity would tend to have a good sense of emotional intelligence, which would then make them do very good actions. Right. People who have maybe a distorted sense of identity might have a distorted sense of emotional intelligence, which would then make them do actions that would be counterintuitive to them. Right. And then because they're betraying themselves because they know they shouldn't be doing these actions, then it creates this resonance, this feedback loop where it just gets greater and greater and greater and greater until you find these people who have completely lost all their shit and they're like 30 years old. Yeah. So, circling back to the original quote before we deviate too far. Yeah. I think that who was Muhammad Ali? Yes, Muhammad. I was going to say Mike Tyson, jeez. Yeah. I think Muhammad Ali's quote is really just about keeping order in your life and not letting chaos reign in. And I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that it stopped. And this is not my own idea. These are ideas that have been circulating in a lot of people's minds. But I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that we've had to stop and actually put ourselves in a position of self-reflection.
Oh, yeah.
And for a lot of people, regardless of age, you could be 5 years old, 15 years old, 25, 30, 60 years old. For a lot of people in their lifetimes, they've never had to deal with themselves.
No, they've always had some sort of external thing, whether it was a distraction or just factually having to, okay, I have to work, then come home, take care of the kids, take care of the house, take care of bills and external things. Okay, I'm gonna hang out with friends, gotta have a social life. Just filling every single gap that could possibly be there for that time to just be like, well, now it's just me.
Now it's just me and my thoughts.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
And who do I want to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's a very good point. Just to, dealing with that chaos, the internal chaos of who you are. That I'll throw in another quote that I really like that ties off of that, which is, this was Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher. He said, you must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star.
Okay.
And I think to totally break that down, that could be a whole different episode. But I think it ties into what we're talking about in terms of like, kind of like anybody who's really successful, who's made a real impact in society. I will say, at least in American society, American history, I'll say that, because those are very easy, relatable examples for probably who's going to be a large part of our listener base, at least for the beginning.
And also, we want to keep our sample size small.
Yeah.
Because we're working. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but we're both American.
Yes, I'm American. Yes.
So we want to keep our sample size small.
I don't know how much you've been in the videos.
Oh, it's just I've probably been cut off a few times already.
Yeah, it's all right. But like a lot of these people, like we think about the Elon Musk, the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs, but also like the Oprah Winfrey's, the Ellen DeGeneres, the people like these. These are not people who you're going to sit down and have tea time with. These are not people who are like your average person. I don't even in terms of their capabilities or whatever, or their intelligence, whatever. Just like they're very I think it was Elon Musk talking on the Joe Rogan podcast. He was like you don't want to be inside my brain, my head, because like this thought's just like constantly firing, and having to deal with that is a lot. And I can imagine it would, for someone who's as productive as he is and creates such innovative things, to have that kind of brain and kind of mind. I imagine it would almost be burdensome in terms of, there's not a switch you can flip where it's just like, I mean, aside from if you want to use external substances or something, you don't just turn that off. If you have a brain and a mind that's just like, what about this and this and this and this, you can't just be like, all right, we're gonna quiet that now. You always have that and deal with that. These people have internal chaos constantly going on, or people who are like revolutionaries, like a Martin Luther King or something. Everything that's going on socially within a country, almost within a continent, you internalize that, and then you externalize it in a productive manner. The amount of character and alchemy it takes to do that is incredible. And that's why these people are admired, because the average person actually can't do that. We struggle with the idea of inequality, but certain people are like, this is my purpose. I'm going to take all this anger and hatred and inequality, take it in, and then put it back out in a productive manner to help fix it. That's chaos inside you that you use to turn yourself into, you can call it a star. There's stars like celebrities, like movie stars, but someone like a MLK or a Gandhi or somebody. Those are stars. Those are, if you look through history, their names are synonymous with history. Those are stars,
there's a part of a quote that says that, if you're thinking too much, you should write. And if you're not thinking enough, then you should read. And so the part of the quote that for me kind of relates to this, if you're thinking too much, you should write.
You know who said that?
I'm unsure.
I like that though.
And so I can imagine these people whose souls are at an unrest. And so they have all this drive to do things, they have all these thoughts, they have all these things that are going on in their head. They need an outlet for that.
Yes.
And so there's another quote by James Peterson that says that we as humans, we need to be able to tell stories. Telling stories is not an invention. It's a symptom of being human.
Yes.
Because that's the way we organize our mind, is by telling stories and relating stories to people. And I think that's part of the reason why we are social creatures.
Oh, yeah.
Is that because it is impossible to live so much life and not be able to tell it.
Yes.
It's impossible to live so much life and carry so many experiences and not be able to relate it to anyone.
Absolutely.
So I think for these particular individuals who have been given the limelight and who are, in a sense, special individuals with special capabilities and a special attuned sense of what they do, they need an outlet. And when they found their outlet, a lot of people found value in that outlet that they were doing. And so they gave them the limelight.
Yes.
There was something else I was going to mention, but I think it slipped my mind. But that was the main gist of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And this, I do believe, is a direct thing from Nietzsche in his book, Thus Spoke the Zarathustra. Essentially, when you gain a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom, what your burden becomes is the need to unload that.
Yeah.
Like, you have to share that with others. You have to find individuals to share that with and to, like,
unburden yourself.
Yes, unburden yourself with, because, it's a lot, even, and I think that's part of why, like, we share things in general, even if it's not like, oh my gosh, this is totally mind expanding, super helpful for life. You're just like, oh, this is a funny cat video.
Yeah.
Why do we feel that innate desire to share it with somebody? Like, it's because, like, oh my God, I have this joy that I'm bursting with from this video, from this text, from whatever. I need to share this with somebody else so they can relate. I need them to know and understand the joy that comes from this. And that's a huge part of, I think, why we do what we do. And I think there's lots of, like, ideas and theories of, like, as like a planet, as a universe, but especially as a people, like, we're all one big brain. And, like, that's what, like, networking is. It's we are, like, individual, like, neurons connecting with each other.
Okay.
Like adding to the informational platform that we have. That's part of why we share information, in my opinion, is just so that it can be built upon. Like, I might watch, like, Animal Planet documentary or something, and I might just take it and be like, oh, okay, that's cool. But then I might talk to a friend who's, like, a biologist or something, and be like, I saw something in this animal documentary, and be like, oh my God, I've been working on this theory about blah, blah, blah. Oh, I didn't even think about it like that. Wow, okay, now I'm gonna, and it helps the human massive consciousness brain evolve in that way.
Or even just, like, for example, you tell a joke in a group of friends and someone adds to the joke and another one adds to that joke. What a great feeling of connection to feel like you added to the bunch.
Yes.
And you're all intrinsically connected, even if it's just by mere laughter.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There was something I was going to say. What was the first part that you spoke about before you went on to the biologist?
Before I went on to the biologist? About, how we're all, like, one connected brain, and how we're all, like, all adding to things.
Before that.
We need to unburden ourselves, and that's part of why we share things, even if it's not, like, super existential or whatever.
It's escaped me. It's got me.
It's escaped me as well, but I mean, that's okay. I feel like now would be a good time to transition to the quote that you've brought to the table for today.
My quote might even be connected to your quote in a way.
I would not be surprised.
So I don't know who my quote is by. I didn't search it up. I'm sorry. Well, I could do that now.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, give us a quote. I can search it up now.
Allow me just 1 minute.
Yeah.
It is by okay, Kierkegaard.
Oh, Kierkegaard. Okay, I don't know much, but yeah.
It says, life can only be lived forwards, but it must be understood backwards. And I think that the way that I connected to your quote is, people who get to 50 and they're like, okay, and they reflect back on their 20s and like, wow, I really am the same person. And I think it's the need. I think this proves the human need to think. We have to.
Oh,
we have a
I
human
think
need
therefore
to think.
I am.
Oh, I remember my thing.
Yes.
Let's go back a minute.
All right.
So when we were talking about the need to unburden ourselves in Spanish, the word for venting, when you vent to someone, like you talk about your problems, is it's undrowning. That's how they call it.
Undrowning?
Yes.
Wow.
It's desahogarse, which kind of means to undrown
slowly
yourself.
for us.
Desahogarse.
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 So it's like to undrown yourself.
Okay.
Which more literally could be translated to that, but I guess one might say unburden oneself.
Yeah.
Or unburden one's load.
Yeah, that's beautiful though.
But it's the imagery for it is even better because imagine you're like just up to your knee, up to your nose in water, and you have to let these things out, or if not, you're gonna drown.
Yes.
And so it's like we need to have an outlet. We need to have somewhere to centralize these thoughts and this chaos in our lives.
Absolutely.
That's my addition to that.
Okay.
A little late.
Yeah. Well, what was the quote again?
So the quote is, "Life can only be lived forward, but it must be understood backwards."
Yes, I think that's a really, really good one. I think that's one where pretty much anybody can benefit from it, because I feel like especially people our age, but even far beyond, we get caught up in this like overthinking, like, oh, why did I do this? Why did I do that? Where am I going? What am I doing? And we need to get back to the here and now. But even in the, like a lot of meditations and philosophies and stuff, be like, just focus on the now, focus on the now. People will stress the fuck out about the now. They won't be doing a damn thing. They'll try to meditate. And this has been me when I first started meditating. I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, I'm cool. I'm breathing. Breathing too fast? Too slow? Okay, wait, should I cross my legs? Should I lie down? Like, okay, this is boring. I'm done with this. Like, you go through the whole process, and it's like, it's not so much about focusing on the here and now. It's about learning how to, at least in my opinion, I actually see this great quote. Meditation is not about learning how to control your emotions. It's about learning how to not let your emotions control you.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and I really like that, and I think that's a lot more what it's about. It's like when you have these, because we're humans, we're thinking creatures. We're supposed to have thousands of thoughts going through our brains at one time, or not at one time, but like in a day or whatever.
Our emotions should come out. We should have emotions.
We're supposed to have emotions. We're supposed to express our emotions. That's what they're there for. Emotions are power. Emotions are experience. But when we live in a society, when we're people, it's about learning how to express the emotions and when to express the emotions. I disagree with a lot of philosophies that are like, we should do away with the negative emotions, or why are you so angry? You shouldn't be so angry. No.
Just focus on positive,
exactly. That's
emotions.
A bunch of bullshit. Yeah. Like, who was it? I forget who it was who said, it's easy to be angry, but it's hard to be angry for the right reason, at the right time, at the right person, at the right amount. Essentially, like, but like, not being, like, if someone comes up to you and punches you in the face and insults your mother, like, biologically, because you don't like being hit, your body, your brain is like, physical damage is bad. Also, emotional damage is bad, especially when it's related. Emotional damage. Especially if it's related to, like, I'm out of the screen now. There we go. If it's related to, like, your close family, you should be upset to a certain degree, unless you're like a monk or a stoic or something. Like, it shows that there's a psychological connection to you understanding what has just taken place. So it's like, yeah, some random person walks up to you, punches you in the face, insults your mother. You should be angry. It's all about how you express that anger. If you get up and you beat the shit out of them, is that productive and good? No, not necessarily. Some people would say yes. I would say no. It's your own thing. But should you have the anger response? Yes, because that means you acknowledge what the hell just happened, and emotionally, anger is factually it's the next level step emotionally from fear. So really, you're coming from a fear of, oh my God, they're going to hurt me, and then your brain transmutes that into danger, fight or flight, fight. So, and then that's where the anger steps in. So it's like, yeah, that's a survival thing. Your brain, your body's like, all right, we need to deal with this. But that's why there's also no shame in running. If someone's trying to fight you, why would you stay there and risk physical harm? You can run. But I think that it speaks to the fact that you understand what's going on. Like, we should have those emotions in the first place. It's about how you deal with them. Somebody comes up to you, punches you, you can be like, I don't know what the fuck your deal is, but I'm not going to fight you. Go fuck yourself. And you can walk away. And now you've dealt with your anger and expressed it in a totally rational way. Fuck you. I'm not going to deal with your ignorant behavior. I'm going to go live my life. Anger, felt, expressed, acknowledged, dealt with.
I think that also, there's another quote by C.S. Lewis that says, I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was sorrow.
Ooh, I think I've heard that one. That's a good one.
And
yes.
To me, it's like, it's not just about feeling angry and recognizing the anger. It's knowing what's the underlying issue with the anger.
Yes. Where's it really
hurt.
coming from?
You're hurt somewhere. There's sadness coming from somewhere that's manifesting itself through hurt, because now you've been sad for so long that now you're angry that you've been sad. You're resentful that you've been sad. So I think that people that suffer from anger issues, they don't realize that really at the root of it is a hurt child that was never validated.
Yeah.
So when I look at my quote, it's saying, okay, it's looking at my life and saying, okay, I was angry this time for this, I was angry this time for this, I was angry this time for this, I was angry this time for this. What's the common denominator? Every time I've been angry, what have I been angry about?
Right.
What is the overlying, theme in my anger?
Yes.
Where am I actually hurt there? And as a child, I was a very angry child. I went to therapy because I had fits of anger that I didn't know how to express. I was a child and I didn't know how to deal with emotions. My parents weren't emotionally intelligent to be like, okay, what you're feeling is anger. Yeah. This is what you do when you're angry.
It's not something you're generally taught.
Yeah. And so when I look back at my life now, I realize the reason that I was angry is because I was not being validated. I was hurt that what I would say wouldn't be taken seriously. Because I was a child, so I was angry at myself for being a child. I was angry at everyone else for treating me like a child. And it went away. I think it would have gone away anyhow when I became an adult, because people would have taken me more seriously.
When do you think you became an adult?
Mentally or physically?
When do you feel like you started being validated as an adult? Rather. Because I feel like that question directly ties more into the sentiment that you just expressed.
I don't know. I don't even think I'm being taken seriously as an adult now. I don't even take adults seriously sometimes.
And why is that?
I think we suffer 2 heartbreaks in life. I think we suffer the heartbreak when we're starting to be, in our teen years or double digits, where we realize our parents are not perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people don't talk about that heartbreak. Where we're like, oh.
You take your parents off of the pedestal.
And it's a deep, deep scar that a lot of us carry.
And it's hard psychologically, because even if you don't, like, a lot of people, they're like, my mom and my dad are the greatest, or I want to be like my mom, I want to be like my dad. Some people are just like, they're my parents, they take care of me. But then you get to a point where it's just like, these are the people who biologically made me.
Yes.
Like they got their flaws. They're just people.
Yeah, they're
just factually
people.
Just people who happen to have a child, and that child happened to be me, and they gave me what they could. They did not have to pass a test. They did not sit down most of the time and think about, are we qualified for this? Do we want to do this? It was just like, all right,
They didn't
I
have
guess.
to get a license for it.
No. You gotta get a license to cut hair.
Or not to make more people. There should be a license to make more people.
Yes.
An entrance exam.
Absolutely. But yeah, most of our parents is just like, all right, we're doing this. And they give us and they do what they can. And not in a disrespectful way, but they're not necessarily qualified.
And it's also like, I think parenthood for a lot of people is sort of like, and I mean this very cynically and I recognize that, but I think for a lot of people when they have children, it's sort of like, here's my number one fan. My child is my number one fan.
Oh, yeah.
Because
you think about it like that, but yeah, that's so true.
It's a dynamic that is very unusual for people to, a lot of people can't handle that dynamic. Someone being 100% dependent on you. And so when I grew up and I realized, wait a minute, my parents don't have all the answers. Wait a minute, every time I ask a question, they kind of blow me up. What's going on? And so they build themselves up to be this great big thing because the child doesn't know any better, and then the child suffers this heartbreak when they're like, oh, my parents aren't perfect. So imagine if you had a mom when you were 5 years old, and your mom might have yelled at you, and then she comes back, hey, you know what? I reacted wrongly.
Yeah.
It was, I had a big feeling, and I didn't know how to control it.
Right.
And this is what we do when we have big feelings that we don't know how to control. We come back and we reconvene, right? We come back and we say, hey, I had a big feeling this wasn't right.
Right.
And that wouldn't have taken my parents off a pedestal. That would have put them right on the pedestal because I would have felt validated. But a lot of parents think that doing that would be like, oh no, they can't have this image of me. It's like, fuck, I have a worse image of you if you're beating my ass than if you came back and validated that we both did something wrong.
Yeah.
And then we were both part of the solution.
Yeah.
So now I can be a child and still feel part of the solution. So
absolutely.
My mom could have, or any parent could be like, how do you think we can work on this? What can we do next time where we're having a big feeling and we need some time?
Right.
I'm going to say next time I'm having a big feeling, I'm going to need some time. What do you think you can do?
Absolutely.
So it's like the child can be a child, but the child can still be guided into problem solving.
Yes.
Imagine the people that we would have nowadays if people parented that way.
That's a great point.
And most people don't get to this point unless they've reflected back on their life and they look back at their childhood.
Yeah.
So for me, a big red flag for dating is people that don't remember their childhood. And I mean this in a very specific sense. I do think that some people suffer unmeasurable trauma in childhood.
The brain is just like, we're not doing that.
Yeah, that was just psychologically blocked out. I can completely understand that. But the other side of that, for people who don't remember their childhood, what that says to me is, I've never thought back on my childhood. I've never self-reflected and revisited the memories of my childhood in a new light. Right. And it's like, so if you haven't done that for your childhood, then when do you?
Yeah.
When do you self-reflect?
Life crisis.
Do you just live by pure inertia? Are you moving through life on momentum? Are you just still living because you're alive?
Yeah.
Or are you living because you want to live and you've created a purpose for yourself to continue going?
Just to live doesn't mean you're alive, Nicki Minaj.
This is Notable Quotables.
This is Notable Quotables, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's... Oh my God. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, like, that's a huge thing for me especially is every chance I get, I reflect. I mean, we were just talking about this yesterday, like, so we were talking about, I was going off about the whole like cursive writing thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, why was I like this as a child? Like, when this is such a simple thing, why as like a 8-year-old was I like, no, this is stupid. I'm not doing this. It's not relevant to my future life. It's like, I don't know how old you are in like third grade, but 8, 10 years old or whatever. Like, I was like, fuck, I remember doing this. Why was I like this? Like, and it's not a like, oh my God, why was I like this? It's a like, huh.
What was my motivation?
Exactly. What was my motivation? How did that help shape who I am today? Am I still like that in some ways? If so, is it a positive? Is it a negative? If it's a negative, can I make it a positive? You know, if it's a positive, how could it become a negative? How can I watch out for that? Like, I think that people who can sit back and reflect on who they were as a child, I think that they'll have a better advantage of determining who they are and who they want to be as an adult. Because, and this is something I I discovered for myself, but I also learned from like some like spiritual teachers. Shout out Ravi Walsh, Heart Path Healing and Coaching. Is your internal child is factually always the person that's driving you.
Yeah.
Whether or not you want to acknowledge it, accept it, whether or not you even know that an internal child or know that they're driving every single one of your actions.
Yeah.
Whether it's eating a salad, eating a cookie, having a drink of alcohol, going to a museum, going to college.
Who you date.
Yeah, who you date.
Who you decide to be friends with.
That internal child, there's some need or want that they have, that person you were before you decided, I need to be an adult, I need to grow up. That person never stopped existing. You just stop listening to them and acknowledging them. They didn't go away.
I think it's also like, once we suffer traumas, if we don't take active action to work through that trauma, we will stay in that mindset. We cannot go from
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
And so we have to self-reflect. We have to do the work.
Yeah.
And in the quote of, I think one of the prime examples of unresolved trauma is in Rick and Morty, where you see the family dynamic of who they are and why they are, and the codependency that is created from Rick's alcoholism, and Rick, who hasn't worked through his own trauma and tries to numb himself with drinking, is that for him, if it's not an adventure, it's not worth it. And a lot of people, they like to, a lot of people who don't have a sense of meaning will distract themselves with pleasure.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of people will go into sex, they'll go into drugs, they'll go into alcohol, they'll go into, these adrenaline junkies, like these people that just take this one very nice thing that life gives us and takes it to another extreme.
Right.
Because they themselves haven't worked through their own feelings and their own sense of self, and so they distract themselves with pleasure all the time.
Yeah.
And Rick Sanchez's character, and that essentially does that. And there's an episode where they go to family therapy, and this woman looks at him and she's like, yeah, of course this is going to be boring to you because it's work. There's no way, you can't do it so wrong that you're going to die.
Yes.
But it's constant work that you have to keep revisiting. And a lot of people don't have the wide enough perspectives to be like, okay, this is something that I need to work on for my future. Yeah. Because I need to think about my past so I can work through my past so that I can build my future better.
Yes. Yeah, I think I immediately thought about that episode when you started talking about that, like the therapy episode. And I really like that one because personally I have very mixed feelings about the idea of therapy. I think that if you have a biological deficiency or something, or biological imbalance in terms of the, or biochemical or whatever the proper term would be, then you probably need some form of therapy, probably some form of medication. If you have genetic history of depression or something, you probably need psychotherapy. I think for the average person that goes to just like talk therapy, I think that you probably just need to take action in your life. I know we both talk about Jordan Peterson, very cool guy, obviously has blown up in the last like year or two in terms of his popularity. I agree with a lot of what he says, not everything, but one thing he said, I think this was also on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I really, really agree with, is like they were talking about depression. Like, is it internal or external? I'm not directly quoting, I don't know if this is the exact language you use, but essentially like, is your depression caused by external factors or internal factors? Basically meaning like, and this is more so me going off of my own script as opposed to what he says, like, is your life depressing? If so, then you should be depressed. Okay. Kind of like if there's people and things around you that should anger you, then you should be angry. Like if you're living a depressing life, like if you have no friends or family to talk to for joy or support, and you work a job that you don't like, and you have a living situation that is below average, and all of these things, that's depressing. Like that's factually, that's not good quality of life. You should be depressed. If you're not, then you're probably unaware and or delusional about your lifestyle. And so therefore your depression should be, it should happen because your body, your mind should be like, whoa, this is not what we want and need. This is not meeting our psychological, emotional needs as a human being. You should be depressed, and then you should take action to fixing those. Get a new job, get friends, reconnect with your family, improve your living environment. Even if you can't move or something, clean up, tidy up, get new furniture, stuff like that. That's external. Internal depression, that's maybe not warranted, is I have all these external things per se, but I'm just like, I feel like I'm not good enough, or I feel like I'm not a good person, or I feel like I should be doing more. Maybe some of these things also do have some level of validity, like, okay, I live a generally good life, but I feel like I could be doing more, and I have dreams and goals, aspirations I'm not achieving just because I don't. Then yeah, you should be to some degree some level of depressed, anxious, angry, because your mind, your body, your spirit is telling you do X, Y, and Z, and you're not. So you're fighting against your inner nature. But if you have all these things, you're living a good life, and you're still depressed, then that's when I feel like, yes, maybe you need therapy. It's like you just have internal like thought patterns and stuff that's like, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, even though you are. It's like the people who look in the mirror and who are 110 pounds soaking wet but are like, I'm fat as fuck. Like, you need therapy for that. You need some form of help and counseling, because your brain, your mind is lying to you, as opposed to being like, the situation I'm in is not good, and I acknowledge it subconsciously, but I don't want to deal with it consciously.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think that concerning back on the first point you made about therapy, I think there is power in therapy.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that a good therapist and a proper therapist, the purpose of them is not to fill your head with their agenda or how they think you should live their life, or how they think you should live your life. But rather, after a few sessions, your therapist determines, okay, you said you wanted to do this, but you've mentioned this thing 3 times already. Why do you think there's this pattern in your thought pattern? And the person unaware of it begins to question then, and finally is like, okay, I don't know why I've mentioned that 3 times. Maybe that's an important part in my life. And so really a good therapist is meant to be like a sounding board for the person receiving counseling.
Yes.
Is to be like, hey, you're throwing all this at me, and I'm giving you this back. What are you going to do with it now?
Yeah.
So for the person who, whose life seems very average and who would have no external factors of being depressed but still suffers with depression, that could be one of 2 things, I think. It could be a biochemical disbalance, just like you said. Yeah. Or it could also be a very limited perspective based on their own internal mental functions.
Oh, yeah.
And so both situations, counseling, I would even say, would still be qualified. Number one, you might need to go to a psychiatrist that would determine, hey, I think what you're actually suffering from is a chemical disbalance. I think that I don't think your hormones are being produced correctly in your brain. I think that so far you've explained to me that you don't know why this is, and I see no pattern of your thought patterns leading to depression. It just seems that you are depressed. Yeah. And so we're going to prescribe medication to help you with that. Right. If you were to go to a counselor, then it could be like, hey, I noticed that you keep talking about yourself this way. Why do you think you view yourself in that light? And like, well, I don't know. My mom always said I was like that. And then look, now you've opened up a Pandora's box. Oh, yeah. So you're really your subconscious mind is your inner child is reiterating what your parents told them. Yes. And so now you believe it. But counseling is meant to empower people to be like, hey, your mom's words may not ring true. They rung very true when you were a child because you had no other perspective. But now as an adult, you still are caught up on that, and so you haven't moved forward. Right. So the counselor would be like, hey, you are not that person that your mom said you are. It's now time for you to create a new identity for yourself. And so the person leaves therapy having a greater sense of perspective. And I think that's what a good therapist does, is that they open up a person's perspective to be like, you've been so caught in this thought loop for so long that it's almost impossible for you to think outside of it. It's become your reality. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot the rest that you said. So.
No, I think that's good because I think that was what you just said is the best, like, kind of counter argument towards what we were talking about earlier, which is where I'm like, who you are is what you do. I think what you just said is the best counter argument towards that, because it's like, yeah, if you grow up believing because whoever told you you're weak, you're lazy, you're dumb, you could factually be a fucking genius who's super productive and intelligent, but you have not been given the opportunity to express that, and in any circumstance where you even tried to express it may have factually just been stopped. Like, you try and express your intelligence or your independence, and it may have just been blatantly stopped in whatever way by, possibly your caregivers or peers or whatever. Like, that's going to inhibit your actual personality and persona in terms of being able to express who you perhaps truly are.
Or even getting to a point where you can even recognize that in yourself.
Exactly, and that could happen. And so that's when it does kind of give a real argument against, like, is who you are what you do. And I think that I still stand by my perspective of you are who you are, what you do. But I think
we want to add the word repeatedly to that.
Yes, repeatedly. Yes, that's very good. Repeatedly. Yes, you can run a mile one day and then sit on the couch 364 days a year. I am a mile runner. yeah, for sure. I think that you can be that mile runner. I think a lot of people who sit on the couch are that mile runner in spirit. I think naturally as humans, most of us are that mile runner, not necessarily specifically, but in terms of just ambition in general, natural way of being, but we've been conditioned to be on the couch.
Okay, in that sense that you just put it in, like, someone intrinsically, like, for example, like the hidden artist in a person, right? Like, that person, I've got great creativity.
We've all got that seed of genius.
But it's like, if you haven't put it in an output, if you haven't taken action upon those thoughts,
I'm not going to call you an artist.
Exactly. So in that action, then yes, I could say yes. I wouldn't qualify myself as an artist, even though I consider myself a very creative person.
Yes.
I've never centralized that into a certain output.
Right.
So so that makes sense. I guess in that sense, I can see your perspective in that way.
Yeah.
However, I think we still have an essence that's apart from us. So, for example, even though I could be considered an artist but never take action on it, I do think that I even transcend being an artist.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. I completely agree, and that brings you to a good point related to, like, the therapy thing. I feel like, especially, like, for me, I used to write a lot when I was younger, like in high school and stuff. I was very into English. That was my favorite subject in high school. And at first, it was just like something I did. It was the only subject I really felt interested in and connected. And I felt like everything else was like, here's the formula, here's how you get the answers. Like, okay, anybody can do that. There's no mind into it. You can put brain into it. There's no mind. There's no personality into it. But writing was like, oh, it's about how do I see things? How can I put me into it? And so that was fun for me. And then it kind of became a way to, like, it became an outlet, like, for emotions and thoughts and stuff. And then I honestly feel like I transcended it in a way. Like, I got to a certain point where that was no longer my outlet. That was no longer how I dealt with my emotions or my thoughts in terms of just writing them down or expressing them creatively in that manner. It became more of like what we're doing now in terms of having these kind of conversations with people.
Okay.
I learned to, if I'm really angry about something, I don't necessarily want to write a poem about it. I'd rather take that energy and go to the gym and put it into a workout or something like that.
So writing served as like that initial block of like, hey, I appreciate having an outlet for my feelings.
Yes.
And then just finding different other outlets that fulfill that same thing for you.
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty neat.
And I think that a lot of people, and that's part of my problem with certain forms of therapy, and like, I think that therapy should not be something you're in for 10, 20 years. Unless you are severely psychologically damaged. And I don't mean just like you have deep trauma. Like a lot of people have deep trauma, and it's sad and it's bad, and they have to learn to deal with it. But I think aside from somebody where it's like, my mother was slaughtered in front of me, that kind of like psychological trauma. Like, we don't know if you can ever be a person because of this kind of trauma. So we need to keep you like in a facility maintained. But if it's just like I had a troubling past and childhood and things like that, but I can be a person, I'm just struggling with being a person. I feel like if you're in after 10 years, that's a decade. Decade, if you live to be like 70, 80, then that's like 10-20% of your life in therapy. And if it hasn't gotten to a point where it's like you don't need that tool on a regular basis anymore, I feel like, what are you doing? I feel like things where it's like, write out your emotions, paint, draw, do theater or something, act out puppets and all. That's all great. I feel like it should bring the underlying causes and emotions to the surface so that you can deal with them and acknowledge them. But I feel like once you've acknowledged them, you have to get beyond that. Like, I don't feel like I feel like I'm not worthy of being a good person, or I'm not worthy of succeeding, or I feel like I'm dumb because the people around me always told me I was dumb. All right. Okay, now we've acknowledged that. Continuing to talk about that gets you nowhere. And it's like, okay, maybe writing poetry or acting it out, or having a thing where it's like you act out that conversation you had with whoever made you feel like that. You get that out. But then you move on. Because you still have a life to live outside of it. You want to live your life based on your trauma. You want to live your life based on your ability to succeed.
Okay. I can see what you mean by that. I can see how someone might get to that point, but I think I'd like to counter that argument by exemplifying the biochemistry of an alcoholic. So imagine you're an alcoholic, right?
Right.
You didn't just happen upon alcoholism. You had to build up to it. People don't just happen upon it. And someone who's an alcoholic might turn to drinking for various reasons. For sure. Regardless of what the reasons might be, the end result might end the same.
Right.
Some people have a predisposition to alcoholism. Other people drink day and night and don't develop alcoholism. It's very much who you are as a person, and
this is true.
Very much biochemical.
True. Yeah.
So imagine someone who turns to drinking every time that they have a troubling home life, and in order to escape it, they turn to alcohol.
Right.
The first few months, it's okay. They can go without it. They don't need anything. They just like the feeling of it. After a few years, their brain begins to change. It has actual changes because our brains are malleable. We have neuroplasticity. Our brains can change if we want them to change.
Right.
So this person continues drinking, maybe spends 10 years of their life in functional alcoholism.
Right.
Something happens that finally they get to a little bit more perspective, and they're like, okay, fine, I need to leave alcohol. They get to the point where they try to leave alcohol, but they can't. They try a few times. They think that they're okay, and then they think that they can be 90 days sober and then just like have like a detox period.
Right.
They turn back to alcoholism, and they find that their body is starting to react a little bit more differently this time to alcohol than it was before, because now the body has created a dependency with it. So they finally arrive to the conclusion that every alcoholic arrives to, that they will never be able to drink another drink in their life. Because they've gotten their body accustomed to alcohol in a very negative light, and the body doesn't forget.
Yeah.
So for the rest of their lives, they will have to leave alcohol. In order for them to be supported for doing that, in order to, fight their bodily urges for alcohol, they might need a community to which support. So they turn to AA meetings, they turn to family, they turn to people who don't drink. They really lead a sober life.
Right.
This is something that will be for life. They will always be considered alcoholics because they will never be able to drink again.
Right.
So imagine that same situation with someone having a traumatic event. The brain changes when you have a traumatic event. It says that the root of all trauma is when you have to betray yourself in order to survive, or in order to deal with the trauma.
Oh yeah. Yes, that's a great definition. I completely agree.
So once you betray yourself, your neuroscience changes.
Yeah.
Your neurons are elsewhere. There's a fear response. There's a flight or fight response in the body. Now, I guess one single traumatic event won't really scar anyone for life, but if you have recurring traumatic events, that will lead to a lifelong brain chemistry change, where you will have trouble solving problems. You will have trouble being a person for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
There would be a point. It's not to say that anyone who suffers trauma will completely be helpless for the rest of it, but I do think that there are people who develop certain types of personality disorders because of their trauma.
Oh yeah.
So, absolutely. For example, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. These are things that are inherited in the person.
Right.
They are unchangeable, they're unmovable, and they are quite detrimental to the person's social life and life as a person.
Yes.
Those people will need a good support system for the rest of their life to deal with their range of particular symptoms. And obviously, I mean this in a very specialized sense. I think when you were referring to, if you've gone to therapy already for like 10 years because, I don't know, your parents divorced and you haven't gotten over it.
I did not mean to laugh at the way I did.
No, but it's true. If you've gone to therapy because your parents were divorced, it gets to a point where it's like, hey, you got to put on your big boy pants now.
Yes.
Your parents divorced.
That's
so many
what
parents
I mean.
divorced.
Yeah.
But if you were the son of an alcoholic who beat your mother day in and day out and day in and day out, and you had to betray yourself in order to cope with that.
That's very, very different.
You might have to, seek counseling for a very long time to make peace with that because those are very hurtful emotions that you have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your brain chemistry maybe said to you, you can't express these types of feelings. You can't be this type of way. So you develop this facade, so you develop this identity, this false identity. So the counselor will then have to work, hey, we have to chip away at this identity little by little. Which will take months, years to really get to the core of this. And then once we get to the core of this, we have to bring it out. We have to deal with it. And once we deal with it, we have to make a plan for how to deal with the future of it.
Yes.
So I think that I do get where you're coming from, but I also just want to widen the perspective that there are certain types of situations that people might need counseling for. And the reason why I say this because I do think that psychology has power, and understanding the way the human mind works can make us better understand why we do what we do. I think that's the biggest question that you can ask yourself. Why do I do what I do? Yeah. I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick and I'll be right back.
All right.
I had a liter of water.
Yes, please relieve yourself. I'm going to ruminate on that. Cheers. I hope everybody's enjoying the podcast so far. Again, I want to give some shout outs. I want to give some shout outs to the Recovery Spa here in Orlando. Just got a massage today by Miranda. I don't know her last name. I don't think it was mentioned. But great massage therapist, fantastic. Really enjoyed my time with her. Shout out to Ravi Walsh. I believe you can find him on Facebook, maybe other platforms, but I know for sure on Facebook. He's a spiritual life coach. Even if you're not into spirituality and things like that, he's just a great human being. He can give you lots of help and guidance into where you're going in life and things of that nature. And definitely a big shout out to Shula Stern, another spiritual life coach. Again, you don't have to be into the spiritual aspects of life. Just a fantastic woman, single mother, really knows how to go through life and handle the difficult aspects and still just be in a place of immense joy. Just a great person. I'm very happy and proud to call her my friend, and shout out to all of my friends and family who have been supportive of me over the years. Another specific one I want to give a shout out to Edward, aka Sandman, aka Echo, who originally had me on his podcast, The Sandcastle. Always had a fantastic time. You got to get it started up again. We got to do it, man. We'll hang out soon. All right, Frankie is back with us. Frankie, you want to give any shout outs while we're doing shout outs?
I'd like to give a shout out to my friend Marion Skank. That is her actual last name.
Her actual last name is Skank.
It is spelled Schencck.
I'd say that's enough of therapy right there.
It is so funny. Yeah. Just because she's provided a space for me to share ideas, and we share so much ideas, and we have such intellectually stimulating conversations that just like James Peterson said, the stories help build and order our minds. She's helped me build and order my mind, and I hope that she finds that I've helped and build and order her mind as well.
Build and order your mind. I think that I really, really like that one. That is
one more shout out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to also give a shout out to my dear Brazilian friend Douglas Vinicius, who constantly challenges me because we have very opposing views on almost everything in life. And he constantly poses a challenge and constantly makes me grow and create a wider perspective on what I think I already know.
Yeah.
But somehow he's already thought it through and has a counter argument towards it.
Yeah.
So I think also for him.
That's awesome. I mean, that's just a shining example of why I think us being roommates and being friends and doing this right here works, because I think we're both people where it's like we have others in our life and are open to perspective where it's like this challenges our beliefs and our way of thinking and our way of lives. And not only are we okay with them, we invite them in. You know, I think that takes a special kind of person to do that, because the ego does have to take a huge blow to do that. Yeah. And it's not easy, and it's usually not fun. Yeah, especially like unless you enjoy pain and anxiety, which some people do. I do to an extent. I don't want to live my life like that, but I know if I'm in that state, means I have some room for growth. I have some room for learning if I'm in that state. So I enjoy the process of it. I'm not a masochist. I don't enjoy actual pain and anxiety, but you know, knowing that it brings the opportunity for growth is important to me, and obviously it's also important to you. So that I think that's a big reason why this works.
I think in the sharing of ideas, I think it's also like we want to be able to invite ideas and we want to be able to talk about ideas. But I think it's also like, for me at least, I still struggle with being comfortable when I'm challenged. And I think most people do.
Oh,
in a certain way.
That would be weird. I don't know if anybody really is.
I guess
maybe in theory, but in practicality, can you actually be comfortable while being challenged?
I guess let me rephrase that.
I mean, please do, but I like the fact that you said it that way though, because that makes me think. Because like it makes me think about like working out, like specifically like using like machines. Like it's always been really interesting and kind of fun and funny to me, where it's like, okay, I'll be at a certain weight. All right, cool. And then I go up like 5-10 pounds. I can't do it. And to me, that's always been like really cool in a way. Because it's like, wow, okay, I'm right here and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I can do this. But this slight adjustment of 5 pounds? What's 5 pounds? And I try and do that. I can't move the object I could physically move, 6 to 15 times. I just literally can't do it. That's really cool to me. And I think that's why it's only a certain kind of person who bodybuilds and works out on the regular. Because that's not really normal. Actually, bodybuilding, working out on that level, it hurts. It's painful, kind of sucks. I hate doing it a lot of the time. But oh my God, I literally can't do this, but I know if I keep working, I can do this. That's cool to me. That's intriguing. I'm like, let me keep doing this and keep trying to do the thing I can't till I can. It's not even I can do it. It's this is weird. I can't, but then I can. That's cool. That's really cool to me.
I guess my phrase wasn't thought out as well, because after thinking about it, I guess it would be irrational to be comfortable while being challenged. So that would be an unattainable goal for me. I guess my phrase was more hindering on the fact that maybe I don't put myself in enough situations where I'm challenged. So a lot of the times it's a foreign territory for me. So it kind of feels like many times I'm being caught with my pants down.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So it's still something that I work through when I have challenging ideas around me that I haven't completely explored.
Right.
But I'm in a situation where I have to put certain values or certain beliefs that I've held on to for quite a long time and have to expose them out for everyone to nitpick.
Yes.
But that's more of how I identify with them. For example, I think that people that identify too strongly with their values tend to be very sensitive people. Because you can't have a conversation with them.
Yes, those who get so offended, you can't. There's just topics that are off. What's the phrase I'm looking for?
Off limits.
Yeah, off limits. Yes, off limits, because you and or they know, even just talking about X, Y, or Z, it's immediately going to trigger that response where it's just they actually cannot.
And it's not even for example, if I were to say, hey, let's talk about when they killed your mother. It's
Right.
not even like that. It's like more
No,
like
that's totally different.
how.
Because that's a reality.
Yeah.
That's a factual reality. They killed your mother versus something where it's like,
How attached are you that you believe that America is the best country in the world?
exactly.
That
You know.
any type of differing opinion will completely destabilize you.
Exactly. Yes. That's something where it's like that kind of offended, I feel like is something that's what has kind of perpetuated our society and our culture in a negative way. I think when we use the word sensitivity or offended, like again, like when we're talking about anger, there are certain things you should be offended by. Like again, if someone insults your mother or something that you hold very foundational to your personal identity, then yes, you should be offended. How you express that is a whole different story, but should you be offended to some degree? Yes, it means you acknowledge what it is. I totally lost my train of thought. What did you say? Oh my god.
About the America thing, like how attached
Yes,
are you to beliefs?
yes, okay, yes. Again, so that's not a belief. That's a reality of someone attacking you or your family members. It's not your beliefs per se. I mean, to some degree, your identity is based on your beliefs, but in this scenario I'm speaking about, it's more foundational. It's more factual rather. But like, yeah, if it's like America is the greatest country on earth and I hold that belief within myself, okay, that could very well be true. That could very well be absolute truth. But there are 1,000,001 ways to dispute that, that anyone with a brain cell could use to dispute it. And if you have people coming at you with these things, even if it's not in an aggressive, offensive way, it factually is like an attack on your belief and your foundation of beliefs. So you're being offended and you're being defensive, in a sense, is natural. How you express it, again, is on you. Can you take it in stride and be like, okay, I'm going to listen, or I'm not going to listen, but I'm not going to attack you for saying it? Or you want to be like, no, fuck you, you're wrong, America. You know, like, there's levels to it, but if your foundations and your beliefs are based in something that are factually debatable and not agreed upon fact, then you open yourselves to that, whether it's a spiritual belief or religious belief or anything that's not agreed upon fact.
I think it's also like once you get too attached to a belief, then you become insufferable. People don't want to be with you.
Oh my God, no!
It isolates.
I've been on both sides of that. I'm sure I've been
isolates
totally
you.
insufferable.
So I watched this show. It's called Medley. It's a
Medley.
Medley.
Okay.
It means Merlin in Catalan.
Okay. In what language?
In Catalan.
Catalan. Where is that native to?
It is a language of Spain. It is part of the autonomous community of Catalonia.
Okay.
Because Spain, even though Spain is the origin of Spanish, they have various languages that they recognize as national language. Well, they have various languages that exist in the peninsula.
Okay. And so, is it very similar to what we know as like common Spanish?
It's sort of like if Italian and Spanish had a baby.
Italian, okay.
That's what it sounds like.
And for the record, Italian and Spanish do have very different, distinct qualities to them.
Prosodically,
as far as you
yes.
know, yeah. What does that mean?
Like
prosodically.
When you speak it, the way it sounds.
The way it sounds. Okay. Which is different as opposed to the way it's like factually maybe like written or something?
Written, it kind of looks a little like French to me.
What does look like
Catalan looks like French.
Catalan, okay.
But you mean Italian and Spanish?
Yes, Italian and Spanish.
I think Italian, it's a little different from Spanish mostly.
Okay, yeah, because like I feel like intuitively, just based on basically the media I've seen, I know that they're different, but I've always understood them to be very, very similar. So you're saying they are very similar, except for how they may be expressed sonically.
I think Italian is more of a conservative language. So Italian looks more like Latin. It uses a lot older words, whereas Spanish has evolved a lot faster just because it's separate. Once more people speak it, the more people you have to speak it, the faster the language evolves.
Right.
So Italian is really only spoken in Italy and certain parts of Africa, whereas Spanish is spoken in almost like the sun never sets on the Spanish language. It's spoken in Spain, all of Latin America except 4 countries.
Yeah.
With the exception of the Caribbean, there's more countries there. It's spoken in the Philippines. It's spoken in Africa.
I did not know Italian was spoken in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
So anyway, the show is
yes.
a show actually based in philosophy.
Right.
And one of the minor characters in the show happens to be American.
Okay.
And the way they presented this American character based on the Catalan view of America is sort of like this very ditzy girl who's conservative and pro-Trump. And through the conversations that you see through the scenes, you kind of get a feel of like the American heart. Because they're talking about like firearms, right? And she's pro-firearm. And she goes, well, what if, you're in the countryside and your family gets invaded by like robbers? Like the robbers aren't going to stop and wait for you to call the police. Like they're going to kill you right there. You need guns.
Yeah.
And I think once they started talking about it and they like offered like different perspectives on it, she kind of would leave the conversation. She wouldn't stay there to continue debating it. And I think that's very much about like the American perspective on how they deal with ideologies. Is that they take these ideologies that were passed down to them and they hold on to them too tight. Because for me, what it really says, people who say that we need firearms and firearms are like a necessity in the United States, what they're really saying is like, I value the heart of America and I'm very nostalgic of how America was. That's what that ideology says to me.
Can you please say that one more time for listeners? I really appreciate the fact that you just said that.
I think that people who believe that firearms are a necessity in the United States for XYZ reason, at the heart of that argument is I feel very nostalgic to the way America was.
Yes.
And I hold the American value system at heart because in me there's a sense of patriotism and almost borderline nationalism for it.
Yes.
And I think that any argument that stems from that really comes from that sentiment.
Yes.
And so when I see this character, it really brings to light, it's like, oh, why are we, as the United States, why have we placed so much value on values? Like, why is our value system the most important thing? Why are our actions the most important thing? Like, for example, people always, like, it's always like a value argument. It's always like a battle of values.
Yeah.
It's never like, okay, yeah, we deserve firearms because of this and that. But it's like, look at what we're doing with the fucking firearms. We are killing children.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me that after Sandy Hook, no one was like, hey, I like firearms and I believe we should, but like, this has gone too far. Like, it feels like and it's not, I get that this is there are many perspectives and many people might say that, values are the heart of a country and, we should die for our values. But
no, we shouldn't. From my perspective, no, we shouldn't. I respect your opinion and how you live your life, but I believe no, we shouldn't. Please continue.
But I also think, like, values don't exist in a vacuum.
No.
And we really need to consider the reality of the situations.
Yes.
And then make that comparable with our value system.
Yeah.
So, for example, we can value firearms, but also admit that we're not using firearms the way that they were intended to.
Yes.
And then have a discussion about that.
Yes.
But it's always like, no, we need to have firearms because the Constitution said so. It's like, okay, but...
Oh, yeah, right.
But...
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like we as a nation are too attached to our values. And I think that's what makes it hard speaking to Americans about other types of being and other types of lives and other types of systems of ideologies and systems of government. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. We get really attached to our values and our ideologies and essentially our beliefs, which stem from our country and our constitution and things like that. And I think that it's gotten to a point where it's almost like wrong to have pride in your nationality or your country or something. And I don't believe that that's a positive way to go. Or not necessarily positive, but I don't think that's a correct way to go.
Yeah, the pendulum can't swing too far the other way either.
Exactly. Like, there's nothing wrong with being like, I was born here, I live here, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of, the country and the culture I grew up in. Because it doesn't inherently mean that you just believe in the positive aspects whilst ignoring the negative aspects. It just means that you're proud of the fact that you're of somewhere that, for someone who would say they're proud, they're usually proud of certain aspects of the culture. I don't think there's no there's no rational, logical American citizen who's like, I'm proud of slavery. Like, I'm proud of racism. No, they're proud of freedom and the ability for equality. They're proud of the fact that, like, yes, I can have guns in my home because I want to protect myself from, protect my family from the government, things like that. They're proud of those things. Rational, logical human beings in this country are not proud of the negative aspects of our country. They might ignore them per se, but they're not proud of those things.
At the old folks home that I worked, there was a woman there who self-identified as God, what are those people called? The people that
those people.
The people.
Gosh,
a
those
Confederalist.
people.
A Confederalist.
Oh, interesting.
And so the argument that she made for it,
they're still alive.
I mean, the argument that she made for it was that the Civil War wasn't about slavery, but rather states' rights.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And this is a big argument that a lot of people believe and a lot of people follow. But my counter argument to that is, okay, we can view that correctly still. We can still say, hey, states deserve to have their rights.
Yeah.
But not at the expense of another fucking person.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's
absolutely.
Why are we so attached to this value that the state deserves its rights at the expense of a person? How far are we willing to take our value system?
Yeah.
And what hill are we willing to die on? And it seems that America went to war for that.
Yeah.
What greater representation of the American ideology and the American mindset that we went to war over a value system at the expense of another person, at the expense of an entire race of people that were suffering in the United States. Like, we had a disagreement about that because we had held so strongly to our values that we couldn't see that people were suffering because of this value system.
Well, I think it wasn't just a value system. I think, and I'm not sitting here like pro-slavery or anything, but you have to acknowledge there was an economic impact. It's and I think that's what a lot of people who are on that side of the conversation are. I don't even think they necessarily understand it, but that's really what they're talking about is the economic impact. If you're a white American during that time,
you had a lot to lose.
You had a lot to lose, but also slavery to you, it's just the way things have been done. It's literally what you've been born into. It's natural. It's normal. There's no problem. The people say it's wrong, but you're just like, oh, well, this is how it is. This is how it's always been, as far as you know.
But you see, what type of value do you have to have? Like, whose life do you protect? Like, if we truly believe that life is sacred,
right? We
should believe that life is sacred for everyone. The South is one of the most was traditionally one of the most religious parts of the United States. It's not like the liberal North.
I agree.
So, which value was over which value? State rights over life? I get it. Like, white people had a lot to lose. Poor white people who never lost anything before.
I'll give you another quote. God loves all his children is somehow forgotten, but we paraphrase a book written 3,500 years ago. That is Macklemore, Same Love, talking about the inequality with homosexuals in the country. It's the same sentiment you're bringing up now.
Gays. It's not a bad word.
I feel like homosexuals sounds more. It sounds more like official. It sounds more like I'm being serious about the topic. Yeah, there's a problem going on with the gays. The homosexual community has been wrong. It's like black versus African American.
Which one do you prefer being called?
This one, people might get mad at me for. I hate being called African American. Don't call me fucking African American unless you're gonna call, Tom, Dick, Harry, Jill, and Jane European American. I was born here. My mother was born here. My father was born here. My grandparents were born here. Their grandparents were born here. I'm part Native American, so their grandparents were born here. Tom, Dick, Jane, Harry, their parents might have been born here. What about before that? They're from fucking across the fucking globe. Just like my real descendants were from across the fucking globe. We're not from here. Native Americans are from here. I'm not African American. I'm American. But if you want to go that deep, okay, I'm African American. You're fucking European American or Chinese American. Only Native Americans are American.
I think
I can be black. I'm not African American. I'm not from Africa, motherfuckers. I'm from Ithaca, New York.
I think also it's that liberal mentality that words mean had to like tread around certain specific.
Oh yeah.
Like it's gotten to the point where I've heard Americans say, yeah, and the African Americans that live in Germany. It's like, bitch, there are no African Americans in Germany. They're just black people in Germany.
But they can't see it because they're so scared. They don't want to be wrong.
One time I was in 4th grade and we were reading about, slavery and all that and the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember this scene. We were reading, and you know how like there's a student book and a teacher book, right? So the teacher had the teacher book and we had the student book.
Yeah.
And it wasn't me reading, it was someone else reading. He goes, da-da-da, the blacks, da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And our teacher in 4th grade stopped him and was like, no, it said you need to say African Americans. She was very insulted by that. But the thing is, our book said black, but her book said African American.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And so she thought in her mind that he was purposefully saying black.
Oh,
a 4th grader.
Oh,
so it's like this idea of like black has so much more malice.
Yeah.
Like it's such an evil word.
Oh my
so
God.
Like, how can we associate, like, who's more evil?
Yeah.
People who think that black is an evil word? Like, those are the people that are the good people?
Yeah.
So I think it's like the whole Voldemort thing. And to quote Hermione Granger, fear of a word only increases fear of the thing itself.
Hallelujah. Absolutely. Yes. Oh my God.
Or rather, it was fear of a name only increases fear of the thing itself.
No, I mean, that may be the exact quote, but yes, I think even fear of a word, yes, it's absolutely true. I think that it's one of the reasons why whenever I got brought into the conversation of like, well, why can't white people say the N-word, things like that, I'm just like, well, first off, you can. Factually, you can. It's a word. You can say it. You can physically pronounce it.
The English language is a tool and everybody can use it.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of if you're asking me, like, genuinely what the conversation's about, okay, why can a black person say it but a white person can't? I've always been at the perspective of just like, well, it's an understanding that if a black person hears a black person say that, there's no historical relation of that being used as a way to signify you are lesser than me. When a black person says it, it's generally a term of endearment, or it's just like it's just a word, it's just a term. When a white person says it, or someone from any other race for that matter, generally is taken by the black population. Even if you don't mean it that way, it has that historical context. I've always been of the mindset of I don't really care. If you're saying that word to me and I have any hint of an idea of you're saying it in that context of the historical context, you're not someone I'm ever going to have a conversation with. You're not someone I'm going to associate with. You're ignorant. I'm not going to spend my time speaking with you. I'm going to completely ignore you. If I feel like you're saying it in terms of just
camaraderie.
Yeah, camaraderie or a term of endearment, if for whatever reason you feel comfortable enough to even attempt saying that around me, there's one of two things as far as I'm concerned. Either, honestly, you're just not that emotionally intelligent to know whether or not you should or shouldn't say it, or we actually have established a level of camaraderie where that's pretty much acceptable to me or amongst the group. And I feel like for those who don't have that level of emotional intelligence, it's like, would you be upset at a person with Tourette's for yelling fuck and go fuck yourself? No, I wouldn't. I mean, I might be upset at the fact that they did it, but am I really upset with them? No. They have a mental illness that causes them to do that. Same way with someone who's racist or who lacks emotional intelligence. Your brain and your mental capacity do not allow you to act as a normal human being who participates within normal agreed upon societal standards. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the circumstances that created you.
I think it's also like a lot of people forget that people always say, look at the historical context of the N-word. It's like, no, it's like people still use the N-word in its historical context, meaning that it's no longer in a historical context.
Oh, yeah.
It's still like a thing.
That's
that
a good point. It's not even historical context.
Yeah.
It's just context. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just in the context.
Yeah.
I think that
the proper context per se.
It's a loaded topic because there's so many perspectives on it, and I think that the most extreme liberal thing would be one time I remember from this university that this professor was teaching an Asian language. I forget if it was Chinese, Mandarin, Japanese, Korean, and he said a word that sounded very much like the N-word, but he's teaching a different language in a different context.
Yeah.
The students of the class wrote to the dean of the professor saying that the black community felt disrespected by the white professor having said the Asian word, even knowing that it sounded like the N-word.
These damn knickers.
That sounded
knickers on.
Ridiculous. It sounded ridiculous to me.
Insane.
I think
that's insane.
That's insane. That is missing the point. And
yes. That's ridiculous.
You're taking power. Excuse me. You're taking power from the black community even by making that claim.
Oh yeah.
Because that extreme, I guess, sense of justice.
Yeah.
Then it kind of erases the whole playing field. Because it's like, then when can we get angry about it? If we're going to get angry about that, then when are people going to take us seriously about it?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I still don't know who can or can't say, and I don't want to say who can or can't say because I'm not at one to say who can or can't say.
Yeah.
But linguistically speaking, the N-word is a reclaimed word in the black community.
Yeah.
And what that is like, for example, a lot of women were given, a lot of men used bitch as
like
a very...
bitch or slut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For women. And what did women do? They reclaimed it.
Yeah.
So they go, I'm going to go out to the bar with my bitches. It's a reclaimed word. It was a word that was first against them, and then they created it for themselves.
Yeah.
Or like, look at these are my friends, they're such sluts.
Yeah.
It's like it's a reclaimed word. Or even in the gay community. Hey, I'm queer and I'm here.
Yeah.
Queer was an offensive term used towards the gay community, and now it's been reclaimed. So a lot of words suffer through that linguistically.
Yeah.
They're an offense towards a group of people, and then they're reclaimed and show a sense of power.
Yes, it's so empowering yourself, People
forget that the black community doesn't just use the N-word because they want to be like, we can and you can, nana boo boo. It's, we're now empowering ourselves when we use it.
Yeah.
We are showing black pride. The reason why you can't say the N-word is because you're not black pride. You don't have black pride. You don't experience the black experience.
Yes.
So
you have
it's
experiences, so you can't have the pride of
exactly.
it.
It's like white people, straight people never ask, well, why can't I just call you a queer? No, because they fucking know why. They understand why. Or it's like, why can't I call my wife a bitch? It's like, well, you know why.
Right.
You know why you can't call yourself a bitch. Your wife a bitch.
Yeah.
Your wife's friends can call her a bitch because it's different. It comes from a different place. It comes from a different dynamic.
Yes, absolutely. No, that's a really good perspective to put it into, like how that kind of the cultural context of certain words or certain phrases, things like that, it extends far beyond something as historical for the U.S. like the N-word, but also extends to not just race, but also sexuality and to gender and things like that. It really is. It's not just about these individual words or phrases. It's about the context they're being used within, and about how they're words that were used against people, and they've taken them culturally and used them to empower themselves. And I think it even happens with words I'm gonna say transcend these issues. Like have you seen Jessica Jones, I don't want to say superhero, but like super being type thing.
I don't know that exists.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of it. I haven't gotten into it intensely, but like there's this scene where she's getting intimate with another individual, and he's calling her a freak in a sexual sense. And then he realizes that she's genuinely like someone with like superhuman abilities. And then he also calls her a freak again, but now it's derogatory.
Okay, you see, that's a great example.
Yes, it's a great, and I really loved that scene because it was just like, I thought it was a shining example of like the whole topic that we're talking about now. It's like, oh yeah, so like being a freak was like cool and it was fun, it was enticing, and it's just like, wait, you're actually like different and weird? You freak. It's and it's incredible. It's incredible, and it's like so. But that's also like you could, and I think there are people who take words like freak and weird, dork, nerd, things like that, and they're just like it can be degrading, but it can also be empowering. Like this world is built by those who are weird, who are freaks, who are nerds, who are weird. The world we live in is built by those people. This microphone, that light, this computer, my fucking iPhone, it's built by people who are not fucking normal.
It's like also, you can even use positive words derogatorily. It's like language
Yes.
without context doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Language always exists in context. So for example,
Yeah.
suppose that there is an ugly Betty of a person, right?
Yeah.
And you go up to him and you go, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful."
Yeah.
It's like, that sounds condescending. You're giving her a compliment, but
Yeah.
she realizes, everyone realizes, a person is aware of how they look, right?
Right.
At least a sane person is aware of how they look. So if
Right.
you're like, "Oh my God, you're so pretty, I love you," it's like, and girls do this a lot with themselves.
Oh,
They'll see this like very I guess unattractive person, or not attractive in the societal sense of the
the
word.
societal norm.
And
Yes.
in order to make them feel better, they'll be like, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." And it's like, what you're really saying there in that context is that her lack of beauty is the most important thing, because you have to combat it in order to make her feel good. So it's like, why can't we use other adjectives? It's like, why can't we say, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, you're really smart. I really like the way you figured that problem out. Oh my God, you're so intuitive. I never thought about it that way."
Yeah.
It's like, we have so many other words, but we always treat these words. Well, actually, I'm derivating from the point. The point was that using a positive word in a negative context
Yeah.
can even be in itself hurtful for people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was
That's why backhanded compliments are much worse than
the
just
word
straight out.
actually is
Actually.
yeah. I remember like when I was younger, like I had this conversation with my mother. She'd be like, and granted, like she was totally valid in terms of, she'd be like, "Wow, I'm really happy you actually did the dishes."
Ooh.
And I'm just like,
Just say thanks. Just stop.
yeah,
at thanks.
exactly. I'm like,
Period.
can we just say thanks? I'm like, can we just be like? I understand. That's like I'm saying, like she's not wrong. Like I wouldn't normally do the dishes, and so it's not an incorrect statement. I actually did the dishes as opposed to what would normally actually happen, which is not doing the dishes. But it's like, can we just be like, thanks, I appreciate you doing it, as
Just 'cause
opposed to
it's true,
thanks,
doesn't make
I
it
appreciate you doing it. Since you don't normally do it, like, okay, I get you.
Watch me never do it again.
Exactly. So yeah, it can the positive thing can very easily become a negative, and I think it's very easy for us to do that as people subconsciously. I think we do it consciously because, I mean, another one of my favorite quotes. I think this is Richard Jefferson, NBA player. "Stay petty so you don't have to get petty." I like that. That's all. I consider myself a spiritual, enlightened person. I'm a little petty, just a little bit. So why not stay petty as opposed to having to get petty? Yeah, stay petty so you don't have to get petty. You know, admit you're petty, be petty, so that when it happens, people are like, "Wow, that's super petty." You knew what it was. I'm a little petty. But I think that. But beyond that, like subconsciously, we do that sometimes as people, and I think that kind of ties into who we are versus how we present ourselves in the world. Like we have subconscious thoughts and realizations of people and behavior and stuff. We don't always express them because either we're not aware of them or it's just not the proper time to acknowledge it. Like, say somebody's like really working on their weight or something, and they're like, "Yeah, I went from 390 to 387. Do you see it?" "Well, no, Sharon, I don't see it. You lost 3 pounds and you're still massively obese. I don't see it. But am I proud of the fact that you're working on yourself? Yes." So what I'm going to say is, yeah, I'm proud of you, Sharon. Even though I'm subconsciously or consciously I'm thinking, I don't see a damn thing.
Also,
but I'm still proud.
I think the supposed Sharon also put herself in a situation where she wanted to be complimented.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
obviously,
Yeah.
I think Sharon
You're fishing
realizes
for it.
you can't obviously see a 3-pound
Oh,
weight
of
loss.
course, but you need the validation.
But you want the validation. And you can
Which
validate
I have no
people
problem with.
without slipping into their skewed reality of things.
Oh,
So you
absolutely.
can still say,
yeah.
"I'm really proud of you," or you must be really proud of yourself for
Yes,
having
or
lost
you
those 3
should
pounds.
be proud of yourself because I don't care how much weight you've lost or whatever it is you've done. Oh, I can now lift 100 pounds versus 110 or whatever. Like, you should be proud of yourself for putting in the work. It's not yet. I don't. The result is great, but it's about the efforts you're putting in. I think that's very, very important, and acknowledging that you can make that conscious effort to be positive as opposed to not is very important, but also acknowledging the subtle negative aspects of the perceived conscious comments is very important. Yeah.
So our podcast today, our podcast episode has almost reached 2 hours.
Almost reached 2 hours. It has. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I do. Fuck. What time is it? I do have to do the work thing in the morning. It's not too late, but yeah, I suppose we can begin to wrap it up.
We could begin to wrap it up. Any final thoughts on our conversation today?
I would just say that,
or rather, any final thoughts on your first episode of Notable Quotables?
It genuinely went even far better than I could have even imagined. I think the flow of conversation and how much, anytime I get to say, as a person who considers himself a thinker and a philosopher, anytime I get to say, I never thought about it like that, I feel like I've now accomplished something throughout the day.
Okay.
And I've said that I don't know how many times throughout this conversation, and I feel very grateful for that. That's really important to me. And I'm very glad that we get to share this with people. But a huge part of it for me is being able to have that. Is being able to have those moments and come back and watch this and reflect and be like, oh my God, here's a whole new way to think about things. That's a huge reason why I'm doing this. That's like 50% is like, I want to share with people my perspective and stuff, but I want to learn. And so I want to thank you for being here, being a part of this journey and helping to educate me and broaden my perspective and consciousness.
I want to thank you for bringing me on your first episode of Notable Quotables. It's quite the honor to, set the stage for the coming visitors that you'll have on your show.
Yeah.
And I think you've got a good thing going here.
Yeah.
I think it's just like we said. I think it's a great thing to tell stories, and it's a great thing to have other people read into those stories, and it's a great thing to have conversations about things.
Yeah.
I think there's no greater joy than the art of communicating in language.
Absolutely.
As a linguist myself, I must put that in there. It is in my contract as a linguist.
Yes, please do. Yes.
But it's true. I do believe that this is the driving force of the human condition.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Another short quote. I don't remember who it was. Somebody else on the Joe Rogan podcast. But like, words are just, they're just sounds we decided connect to concepts that exist. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very, very special thing. Like, if you were some, like, alien looking down on us and never heard, like, human language, like, any language, English, French, Spanish, whatever, you just, like, look down on us, you just saw these creatures just going, we'd look fucking weird. It's incredible. Like, we're just, these sounds are coming out of us. We decided they mean something.
Yeah,
they're just sounds.
You're hitting your tongue against different parts of your mouth, and I'm receiving quantifiable data from it.
And isn't that incredible? That's incredible.
That's ridiculous.
And that's why telepathy is a real thing. We'll get into that more in another episode, but that's why we're telepathic creatures.
True that.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for giving us your time. I guess my expectation for people who listen or view this podcast is to take part in the conversation.
Yes, please. Please do.
To not view this as like the end all be all. I think a lot of times when we see like content online, we're always like, no, he's wrong because he said this, or I believe something. It's like, we're just two people who are present here, but online makes it as if you guys were present there. So if you want to add more to the conversation, please do.
Yeah.
We
that's
love
why
to
I'm
hear
sharing
more.
this.
That's the point of this. So
yeah, that's the whole point. We want us to spark conversation, open-mindedness. I would love to have people who are fans, who are interested, be guests on here and share with us the quotes that they want us to break down and discuss. We want open conversation. I don't in any way think I'm right about anything that I've said here tonight, definitively. Please prove me wrong. As a philosopher, please explain to me how I'm wrong. I'd love to hear it. All right, thank you, everybody. I hope you've had an incredible time listening to us. We will have merchandise available soon. We'll be up on social media. You can follow me personally on Instagram at Octavius Lundy. When I post this on YouTube, I will have a link in the description box for you to follow me. Frankie, do you have any social media you'd like to add to this?
I think I'll just include it. I'll send it to you to include.
Okay, so everything will be included in the description box on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, you can go find us on YouTube and follow the link on there for our social media. But for everybody else out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time. We love you and take care.